Greetings from Kilrush in County Clare, with the early monastic settlement of Inishcohig or Scattery Island in the background. My name is Garrod O'Kelly Dalgash. I am currently on Cathaoirleach Ionta na hÉireann, or Chair of Clans of Ireland. And today I would like to discuss the history of how Irish clans and historical families evolved and how modern surnames do not give the full picture. In other words, two people who may share the same modern surname may not be from the same clan. So I hope that what I have to say may offer some guidance on how you may advance your understanding of Irish clan and family origins. Ireland is celebrated for its culture, including our beliefs, our morals, system of law, customs, habits, and knowledge of who we are as a society. It is a fact that culture evolves, otherwise we would still continue with prehistoric cultural practices, some of which may not be quite to our taste. The Ireland of the 21st century has a vibrant population backed by a first world economy that continues to hold its heritage and culture in high esteem. The Irish language is growing from strength to strength, no, ag dul ó neart go neart, in recent years in particular. An Gaeilge has been made an official and full working language of the European Union, with my namesake, Sean Kelly, a member of the European Parliament, submitting the first ever amendment in Irish. In addition to our language, we are known for our music, literature, art, dance, folklore, traditional clothing, agricultural products, sport, and the inalienable bond that exists between us Irish people and our ancestors. Our interest as members of Irish clans and historical families is in our ancestral origins, be they Gaelic, Viking, Gallo-Glas, Anglo-Norman, or more recent late medieval settlers of whatever ethnic origin. Those of us who are interested in our Irish origins embark on a voyage of discovery which can lead us sometime to where we may not have expected. Primarily, for the benefit of you and your family, it is imperative that your genealogical chart must be sourced and researched using reliable first principles. In other words, if we are serious about research into our early ancestry, we may only use fundamentals that are facilitated by source material, often manuscripts that have been interpreted and edited by historians, genealogists, and other academics, as well as by research work carried out by scientists such as archaeologists. Clans of Ireland is the umbrella body that was established to authenticate and register Irish clans and historical families, in addition to representing their interests and providing guidance relating to them. It is a non-political organisation encompassing kindred groups from a variety of ethnic backgrounds whose own members may now live globally but categorise themselves as Irish, or even more definitively as originating from a particular ancient tuatha or kingdom within the island of Ireland. So today I would like to offer some guidance on questions that frequently arise. It must be borne in mind that our island, that has been variously known as Scota, Hibernia, Éire, or Ireland, was prehistorically inhabited by a very small population of hunter-gatherers who had immigrated to here in several waves for over hundreds, even thousands of years. It is accepted that the most influential of these immigrant peoples was a broad, disparate group known as Celts, who arrived from Central Europe over a period of several centuries, sharing little with each other except a similar language and a knowledge of pastoral farming. Ancient Ireland, at the advent of the Christian era, was an island of many tiny kingdoms, not one united nation as it is represented in many ballads. Each of these kingdoms was ruled by an individual who was chosen from among his kindred group based on his personal, intellectual and physical qualities. This election system was mirrored in the organisation of society in that various kindreds held hereditary service roles. Irish surnames originate from different sources, such as from different progenitors or from different hereditary offices in society. In medieval Ireland, one's lineage generally dictated one's station in life. Clearly, and contrary to the wishes or even the romantic belief of many who are of Irish descent and who live around the world, the majority of Irish people were not of noble lineage or even of high rank. However, a significant number of kindred groups held bardic, military, physician, legal, clerical, and other hereditary service offices. These families tended to be better off and were more likely to have survived the ravages of famine and war, and importantly from our perspective, to live long enough to have had descendants. It was from the case that the ruler or holder of one of these offices gave his name to the family who descended from him. Prior to the 10th century, people were simply known by their given name within their fine or close family circle, and outside of this circle with reference to their father and ancestry. From the late 10th and early 11th centuries, as the population increased, surnames were formalized using this ancestral reference method. Ireland, as far as we know, is completely populated by people whose origins lay elsewhere, if one explores the mists of time. Yet, the member organisations that make up the membership of Clans of Ireland consider themselves to be intrinsically Irish because they were established in Ireland before the modern era and certainly by the end of the Gaelic era. We use the reference to the Gaelic era because the Gaelic Celtic influence was the most significant cultural influence during the entire history of the island of Ireland. A number of years ago, members of Clans of Ireland overwhelmingly adopted the late 17th century as the threshold date before which kindreds must have been established in a location, such as a barony or townland in Ireland, that they were and generally continue to be associated with. The aim of Clans of Ireland, as I said, is to authenticate, register and promote clans and historical families whose interest is in their origin, history and culture. It is not, and I stress this, it is not to represent the views or values of any particular ethnic group or promote prejudice against any other. Expression of contemporary political bias, either Irish or foreign, is prohibited, as our members represent kindred groups from a variety of ethnic backgrounds. I would also like to say that it is expected that at least some of the leading members of our member clan organisations live in Ireland, so that their clan culture is intrinsically preserved and understood. So, how can kindred groups for a number of different ethnic origins such as Celtic, Gallo-Glas or Anglo-Norman be considered as being eligible for membership of Clans of Ireland. Clearly, as has often been repeated, there must be undisputable documentary evidence that a family had been in constant residence in a tuatha or barony or been linked to a kindred that had cultural and socio-political structures in the Irish tradition since before the end of the 17th century. May I suggest Paul McCotter's book, Medieval Ireland, Territorial, Political and Economic Divisions, for an in-depth description of the socio-political system of Gaelic Ireland. This association between kindred and territory is constitutionally defined, but there should also be evidence that members' ancestors had lived as fianta or clans in the indigenous fashion, as, after all, we are an association of fianta or clans. Indigenous in this particular context can be understood to mean the manifestation of being Irish through the use of the Irish language, manners, dress, mode of riding, laws and agricultural practices. Thus, the descendants of Viking, Gallo-Glas and Anglo-Normans who had settled in Ireland and adopted an Irish mode of living were considered Irish by the end of the Middle Ages. The right of kindred groups from a number of different ethnic origins to be considered for membership of Clans of Ireland, based on the longevity of their residency, is incontrovertibly of primary importance. However, it is also necessary that the family can prove association with a tuatha and that it had adopted the Irish native way of life. The Anglo-Normans who had arrived during the 12th century generally adopted Ireland and the Irish way of life as theirs, and the term Iberniores ipsis Ibernis, or more Irish than the Irish themselves, has been used to reflect this. Dr. Joseph Mannion, Canara of the O'Manine Sogan, or O'Manion of Sogan clan, in his excellent academically researched and recently published book, Anglicising Tudor Connacht, addresses the adoption of a Gaelic title by Anglo-Norman settlers, the de Burghs, just about a century after they had invaded and seized what became their stronghold in Connacht. They became what was termed English rebels. By the way, that particular invasion occurred almost 900 years ago, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge since then. It is not surprising, therefore, that a descendant of the de Burghs now plays for the Galway hurling team. Indeed, another of that clan, Eamon de Burca, has been honoured by Clans of Ireland when he was conferred with the Order of Merit for his work on advancing Irish history. The Gallo-Glas, or Galloglach, taken to mean a warrior from Inchigal, or the Hebridean Islands in Scotland, who came to Ireland in considerable numbers from the 13th century, generally assimilated into Gaelic society relatively quickly as hereditary professional soldiers. Indeed, one such kindred, the Macabe or Macabes of Breffni, have been members of Clans of Ireland for decades and have been represented by Brian Macabe for most of those years. I would like to note that as an example of the integration of the Gallo-Glas into Irish society, the ceremonial sword, Cleave na Inta na Hern, used by some member organisations in the inauguration of their cannery or taoiseach, is a replica of the sword that would have been carried by the Gallo-Glas warriors in the 14th and 15th centuries. On the other hand, the settlers who arrived during or after the 17th century were far less likely to have adopted the traditional mode of living, which was based on pastoral farming economy. These settlers were more conquerors than assimilators and rarely attempted to become Irish or develop familial bonds with their Irish neighbours. They may have been residing in Ireland, may even have left their mark on a place, but their hearts were domiciled elsewhere, and they manifestly lived as colonists with their arable farming and urban-centric culture. By the 17th century, the Gaelic cultural way of life was close to an end, and settlers who perpetuated a foreign cultural and socio-political structure can hardly now claim to have been Irish clans. So kindred groups from different ethnic origins who had settled in a location such as a barony or townland in Ireland and who had adopted a traditional mode of living prior to the end of the 17th century are considered to have been established as an Irish clan or historical family. I would now like to turn your attention to a highly important genealogical distinction that should have been made between people of the same Irish surname. When I introduced myself, you may have noticed that I refer to my fully descriptive ancestral name, O'Kelly Dalgash. In doing so, I distinguish my kindred from other O'Kelly families whose origins are genetically completely different to my family. The most renowned tribal group that bears my surname are the O'Kellys of Ivania. These O'Kellys descend from Kellogg, who in turn descended from Manya, while my family descend from Kellogg, who descended from Cass. There is no other relationship between O'Kelly or O'Kelly Dalgash and O'Kelly Ivania, other than the fact that we are both Celtic. On the other hand, at the recent unveiling of a Clans of Ireland historic sites plaque at a McGrath Castle, Sleedy Castle, I described how there is a genetic link between the McGrath of Thomond, McGrath Tuan, and O'Kelly Dalgash, as both descend from the same tribal ancestor, Cass, the progenitor of the Dalgash tribe. In other words, I am more closely related to the McGraths of Thomond than to other O'Kellys who are not O'Kelly or O'Kelly Dalgash. It must be remembered that until the 10th and 11th centuries, surnames were not used in Ireland, so that people were identified as being a child of their father and grandfather within their kindred group. During the 11th century, probably due to population expansion, the usage of the name of the kindred group in association with the given name was beginning to be adopted. Eventually, over a protracted period, and particularly with the introduction of Anglicisation, reference to the tribal origin was discontinued. People of the same name became distinguishable by their address rather than their ancestry. In Ireland, this remains current. So, for example, the McGillicuddy family is a senior branch of the O'Sullivan Moor, who occupied much of the Ivera Peninsula in County Kerry. The name McGillicuddy is an anglicised version of Macilacuda in recognition of the family's devotion to Saint Macua. It is said that an O'Sullivan Moor Taoiseach sent one of his sons to be educated by the saint, who subsequently became known as O'Sullivan Macilla Macuda. In time, the family became known without reference to the O'Sullivan clan, but distinguishable by reference to the mountain range in which they lived. And so the family became known as the McGillicuddy of the Reeks, and the mountains became known as the McGillicuddy Reeks, which is Ireland's highest peaks. This is where they are located. I will end by stressing how inadequate the use of a simple surname is in the context of the history and genealogy of Irish clans and historical families. It is not adequate to record a clan's name without either a precise geographic or kindred reference of origin. Agus ar deireadh, I would like to bring your notice to or remind you that the theme of the 2025 Clans of Ireland Cultural Summit is association between people and place in medieval Irish society. And the genealogist and medieval historian that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Paul McCotter, is to be our key speaker. The summit is to take place on April the 4th and 5th in conjunction with the annual general meeting of the members of Clans of Ireland. I would like to thank my son Shane for his help with making of this video, as without him this would be black and white using something called VHS. Anish go dtí an céadúr eile slán. Goodbye until the next time.